Hey everybody, it's Erik Torenberg, co-founder, partner of Village Global, a network-driven venture firm. And this is Venture Stories, a podcast covering topics relating to tech and business with world-leading experts. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Venture Stories by Village Global. I'm here today with a very special guest, Karthik Puvvada, also known as KP, who's just joined On Deck to be the program director of the just announced On Deck No Code Fellowship. KP, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Erik. I really appreciate getting the honor to be on the podcast, but also to work for On Deck and take this no code mission forward.
So let's get into it. What is the On Deck No Code Fellowship, and what it's tell us the story of how it came to be and what its goals are.
So as you can attest, On Deck's larger goal is 10xing the number of founders in the world, right, and creating that massive impact that can be unlocked by building companies. In the similar vein, No Code Fellowship's goal is 10xing the number of no code builders in the world, and I view this as a step before being a founder, because as a founder, you're thinking about, go-to-market strategy. You're thinking about pitching VCs. You're thinking about scaling team, hiring, all those other components that come into play. But No Code Fellowship is really like the step before that, where if you're a non-technical founder, or if you're a creative person, or if you're a product person, like I used to be a product guy, but you never really shipped anything, or you never really have anything to show to anybody, this is the place to be. And we're trying to attract world's top tech talent who are curious about building things. So the tinkerers, the builders, so this is the bad signal for all of them.
Totally. I love it. Talk a little bit about your journey and how you got into no code, and then we can segue into how no code has evolved as a movement.
Sure. So for the longest time, I had been taking corporate jobs, and I had been on product teams. I was on the NBA mobile app, the official NBA team, and but they're all big product teams. They're not startups. I always viewed myself as the idea guy, right? I didn't know how to code, but I knew enough to sort of communicate with developers and testers, and work in tech teams. But the challenge was so my Notion doc of ideas that I want to ship kept growing and growing and growing over time. And I was getting very restless and frustrated watching everybody else basically take shots on their dreams and bring their ideas to life. And to me, the biggest barrier was code or capital, or getting a technical co-founder. And all of these are daunting if you think about it. So I took a step back in October 2018, and I decided, this was actually right after me finishing the book called Atomic Habits, as you may have heard of it. And I was it talks about owning a new identity and embracing an identity and habits. And I said, the first thing I wanted to do was I want to change this notion of being an idea guy. I want to be a maker. I want to be a builder. And there's so much gravity about that because it forces you to act immediately. And I did that. And then I built a bunch of habits through the day, where every day I would wake up and start exploring no code things, Bubble, Webflow, Hard, what is about this? And October 2018 was almost the inflection point again for no code in general as well. So many platforms were taken off. And I just, rode the wave, and I built a lot of these no code products in public as side projects. And I built about eight of them towards the end. And luckily, a month ago, I had a new visa, and I was looking for a new job. And I was okay, I'm gonna announce on Twitter that I will work at an ambitious startup that believes in these same missions. And as the rest of the story is on Twitter, but On Deck was the first to jump. And then this particular No Code Fellowship was very inspiring for me. And I decided that, yes, this is a place to be if I want to build the next generation of no coders.
And talk broadly about your philosophy of build in public that you live and embody so well. How did you get inspired by it, and what does it mean to you?
I think a part of that really came from not being in Silicon Valley. I live in Atlanta, and I don't have as many connections and a network in the Valley or New York City. So my only way to reach out to ambitious, interesting people was by doing interesting, ambitious things. And the way to do that is actually build in public. Because, right, if you build something cool, why don't you talk about it on the internet? And so I went to Twitter. Erik, I used to follow you for a long time, and big fan of all the work you've done. And you're actually, I think, a built in public hero in my view too, because you share a lot of your lessons. So what happens over time is content you put out there compounds and it becomes like the lighthouse and brings other interesting, smart people into your orbit because they're looking for similar things. So that's what my mantra was about, build in public. And, it's not about the numbers. It's not about having like followers or whatever. It's really about, surrounding yourself with, interesting and ambitious people. And the only way they'll come to you or to your profile or to talk to you is through work. So that's about it.
Totally. And yeah, people like Ryan Hoover and others have pioneered it. And I'm definitely a believer. Let's zoom out and talk a bit about just no code itself and as a space, how it's evolved, how it's emerged, and then we can talk about where it's going. Why don't you trace the history a little bit in terms of the different phases?
We have to get very technical about the history here, because it's like, as you may know, no code is not brand new. It's been around for a long time. Ryan Hoover likes to joke that Macromedia Dreamweaver is also no code, which is true, right? And WordPress has been around for a long time. So what has been happening over the last maybe like 30, 40 decades in software engineering is, we've been producing systems and platforms that will abstract away a lot of the, like menial tedious tasks that you don't have to like literally always type that up or write syntax for little blocks of, code. And that is what the spirit of no code is, in my view, is that being smart about, being resourceful about like doing 10x creative tasks and not the 1x monotonous and repetitive tasks. So, over time, like we went from Dreamweaver to WordPress to, I think, you have to give credit to Webflow. They were like one of the OGs. And, of course, Bubble. And over time, like it became almost possible to build web apps, not websites, web apps. And, over time, even mobile apps too, like, Glide does a great job at Dalo, DraftBit is trying the same thing. So it's sort of now I think we're in the phase 2, which is like very, very buzzing activity in no code. So many brilliant, companies trying to offer platforms for non-technical people to almost visually build things, right? I think there's the next level of abstraction, and it's inevitable. To me, like the whole debate about code and no code is almost a distraction, because that's like, it's impossible. You're wasting your time if you're going down the path of that. Instead, I'd rather focus on building and like using whatever tools we got to, unlock creativity. So the next phase, if you will, is I think we're at the cusp, and that's why I'm excited for OnDeck's No-Code Fellowship program, because now we're going to see a plethora of really, if you may, like badass products, B2C consumer products that people can't even tell if it's code or no code. And we are already seeing signs of that. And all it takes now is bring these amazing builders and like let them hang out with each other and let them basically tinker and build and break, and they will like discover amazing products themselves. So that's my thesis about this.
And talk about what are some of the bottlenecks that you think prevent people from even getting off the ground or learning, or what are you hoping that the fellowship might how it might help remove some of those bottlenecks?
I think the education piece is being like solved from a long time. No code education, like how to use these no code tools, has been worked on for a while now. And I think there's so many templates now, so many tutorials and videos and programs like MakerPad, shout out, they do a great job of education. But what I think is still holding back so many of the builders and creators and makers is really this conviction that no code products can go on and become unicorns, can go on and attract, VC money or early customer success, or basically be like badass no code badass products, and that to me is a question of just, infusing this enthusiasm into the community and not holding them to only just templates and clones. And like, it's, to me, if you're like, there's no point in trying to recreate Airbnb. There already is Airbnb, so we don't need to like clone these things. And that's not, to me, like interesting enough in no code space. What I'm curious about, what I want to see more of are like 0 to 1 products that were born by a non-technical founder when he or she had an itch and like saw an opening, and they're like, okay, I'm going to use no code to build this quickly and validate it. And then they turn out to be like amazing products. That's the new angle that I'm looking for, is like not just templates. I want like real products.
Yeah. And talk about, one question people often have around no code is, how reliable is it, or how scalable is it? Why don't you address some of those concerns and questions?
Yeah, sure. I think that was there was a lot of conversation around that in the beginning, especially like no code 1.0 days. And they were like, okay, what are we going to do about security? What are we going to do about scaling and reliability? And I think these platforms have risen to the occasion. And like Bubble, for instance, like I know of so many apps that are built in Bubble, mobile web apps, like Coins, for example. They're a fintech company. They raised $2 million almost, and it's all completely built on Bubble. And so the security that you get from now the modern no code platforms matches what you get from AWS or Google Cloud Solutions. And so it's the same questions people asked about AWS too, Eric. Back in the day, they were like, "Oh, AWS, let's see. I don't know. I don't feel very confident about scalability there." But look where we are today. AWS is Amazon's like biggest growth vehicle. So in my view, that's where we are. Right? We're at the AWS like from 7 years ago moment, and somebody has to play the long game. And I know on deck's with me here, and we should play the long game and just get over that cusp and create a new generation of no code makers.
Talk about where the technology is going, or sort of the enabling infrastructure. We're seeing some startups build like entirely on no code. Where do you see the infrastructure going over the next a few years?
Over the next few years, I think we're gonna see two interesting phenomena. One, lowering the bar even further, right? Because right now there's still like a tiny it's like 4-inch bar. There's still like a little bit of a learning gap in for a beginner, absolute beginner to no code. There's still like a little bit of a learning curve. I wouldn't say it's not the same as like a coding boot camp or a coding would require. That's still like 6 months or 3 months. This is still maybe like a week or 2 weeks in no code. So I think in the future, my bet is we will see even more beginner friendly, yet powerful platforms. Like I'm dying to see the Canva for no code, where like anybody, literally anybody, including like my wife or anybody who doesn't know much about tech, she's an educator, but she loves Canva. That's the level that I want no code to go to, where anybody can simply build something cool using Google Sheets or simple interfaces with the back end and front end. Now that's one end, at the beginner side. Now at the extreme prosumer side, I see like platforms like Bubble pushing the envelope even further. Like there's already science right now. Like there's platforms like Clutch, Builder, and DraftBit, and these are basically producing clean React Native code after you finish your visual drag and drop, no code project. So essentially, you can just hand it off to a dev team or a dev shop or a developer and say, hey, can you maintain this? And let's scale to like 10,000, customers or whatever. That's possible. So these are two trends that I'm seeing is where, over time, we'll see more and more of that.
And say more about how you think venture capitalists should approach to the space in terms of if you were, putting your VC hat on or investor hat on, what might be your request for startups or your thesis of what are, likely big sort of enabling, companies beyond what you just said?
I think first thing, we have to step back and realize like, look, this is still early in a way compared to code. Code had massive, like, years and decades of advantage over no code, obviously, right? They've been around longer. So the belief and conviction in code is way higher. But we cannot use the same comparison for no code because here really you're unlocking a lot of creative potential that a lot of entrepreneurs are walking around with amazing ideas and they're like one no code MVP away from shipping it or unlocking it. That's where, as a VC, I think I am bullish on betting on no code ideas, especially because the world needs so many more solutions. The world needs so many more ideas to come to life. And we want more builders, right? And Jason has said that, right? Like we want more builders. And OnDeck wants that same thing. Like we need to 10x the number of people who are founders and builders. And no code is the fastest ramp, to get there. So by investing in no code or by sort of enabling no code, you're literally unlocking, so much human potential, and maybe we can accelerate and go to bigger problems in the future, right? Because I feel like, because we're like a lot of the no code makers, or let's say like people who had great ideas, but they don't have, developer friends, they don't have capital or, to invest in, dev shops, they're being stifled today. and their ideas are being locked up in Notion docs, right? I think so. I'm very bullish. The next 10 years, we're going to see so many more KPs, so many more amazing no code builders, and they will take multiple shots at starting companies, and that's a good sign.
100%. Zooming back in a little bit for people who are just beginning with no code, there's a number of different tools that they could use or ways to learn. What do you recommend in terms of getting started?
This is a common question I keep getting asked all the time. So I actually built a little thing called no code cheat sheet. So it's on my Twitter, and I'll pin it in after this interview. But right now, if you're an absolute beginner, I would first of all ask what kind of things you're interested in. Are you interested in mobile apps? Because if that's the case, then you want to give Glide a shot, glideapps.com. And they're very simple. They're powered by Google Sheets. So, it's very, very beginner friendly. And then there's Adalo, also mobile friendly. And then there's a DraftBit that's coming up, which is slightly advanced. But on the website, if you're building CMS or e-commerce sites and Webflow is an answer, and you want something more sophisticated, something slightly sophisticated like searchability or showing a bunch of lists of items, or something slightly more advanced than something like Airbnb, for example, you want Bubble. And so between these two, I think you're pretty much good. And if you want landing pages or simple enough, like wait lists and those kind of things, you have Card. All of these are like anybody no code ecosystem will recognize these. I'm not giving you anything new, but these are like the places that I would go to. Well, how do you feel about, because especially coming from, again, like I said, hanging out with VCs and hanging out with founders, what are you seeing the evolution of no code as? Yes.
What I see in the accelerator model and Village of course is doing it too, really pioneered is in the cohort model is accountability and group accountability. And every week you had to show up with what you shipped and how many users you talked to and what your progress was.
Right.
And I think that, and we've seen that with our founder fellowship and now with our writer angel fellowship. And I'm really excited with no code to introduce a level of accountability that builders really thrive on. It's sort of like, why do you go to Barry's boot camp or whatever,
exactly.
workout classes? Because you see other people who are crushing it and it inspires you, and you signed up to do it. You have to do it. And so I'm hoping that this fellowship too can motivate people who know that they want to build, but haven't been as ruthless, as relentless on their own as they would like to be, and then also just be motivated, inspired by other people who are doing it at a higher level and learn from them as well.
So one of the things that we're introducing as part of On Deck No Code Fellowship is this idea of capstone projects, right? Because one of the things that is, I think, currently challenging in the no code ecosystem is the lack of focus on actually achieving something tangible, right? I mean, a lot of people are just tinkering with low level things, and maybe they're building a little landing page or a cool little side project, but they're not, to your point, they're not being relentless about something that is a solid amount of work, right? And in my view, if we sort of have the path laid out and say, here's where you're going to start, and here's how everybody else around you in 10 weeks is going to produce a capstone project. What are you going to do now? Right? That sets the force function, and that sets the constraint. And we're going to see a lot of people be much more active and engaged, and maybe they can collaborate. That's okay. But at the end of the day, when they walk away, they at least have a capstone project that they can use to get they can get a job anywhere. They can that's so much more powerful to me than a resume, right? So, or be a founder. They can use that and turn it into an MVP and basically go raise a pre-seed or something. So yeah,
I can't wait for that. Yeah, no, there'll be a lot of great intersection with our other existing fellowships for sure.
Right.
KP, why don't you say more about just details of the program in terms of you mentioned the capstone, but what else can people who go through it expect?
Sure. So the program is currently 10-week long. It's a cohort, as we talked at the beginning. It's a virtual program, just like any other On Deck program. And there's going to be a lot of fun things. We're planning a build-a-thon, that weekend dedicated to hacking and basically creating no code projects nonstop. And we're using we're thinking about workshops. You're going to have a Bubble workshop. You're going to have a Webflow workshop. You're going to have for a very beginner friendly. We're going to have slightly advanced, all levels, and we have a great set of speakers from the no-code ecosystem coming in and sharing their stories, anecdotes of how they got to where they are now, but also technical speakers who will help you with your technical questions that you may have. And we also have office hours. You get peer-led office hours, so it's a lot of the community right now is filled with builders, and we're going to attract more and more no-code builders. So you're going to have office hours. If you get stuck with any of these no-code platforms, you will have folks to help you out. So it's very hands-on, tangible, and we're going to keep you very busy in 10 weeks. But it's exciting. We want you to walk away, like I said, with this capstone project that you're proud of. And so that's the plan. The fellowship link will be on the homepage, beyonddeck.com. Look for no code and you'll find it on the homepage. And you can find me at thisiskp_. And really appreciate, having me here. And it's been fun. It's been fun, Eric. I'm excited. I know you're excited too. So
yeah, it's just the beginning. Excited to kick it off, KP. This has been a great episode. If you're an early stage entrepreneur, we'd love to hear from you. Check us out at villageglobal.vc.